Hello and welcome to another episode of the Farr Show, where I am Damian Farr, and tonight we're talking about the MCU. The title sounds a bit worse than it is. The decline of the MCU is just kind of me pointing it out here. You know, the MCU has been on a decline. I think since COVID happened, I think they lost a lot of what made the MCU, if that makes sense. I think there's a lot of issues that happened. I think it's more just, let's be honest, Endgame was a pretty good jumping off point for the MCU to jump off. And since then, it doesn't seem like they've had really a theme that they're going with. So, let's start talking about it. Before we get too far into what I think the problems are, and some of the future projects, I think the biggest thing to point out is, I'm a huge fan of the MCU. I don't know how to explain this other than, to put into perspective, I was always a DC fan growing up. To me, Batman and Superman were the characters, with Wolverine and Spider-Man. Those were the four. Well, as time has gone on, DC was my comics company that I would read the comics from. You know, we all had a bias, let's just be honest. My bias was DC. I still buy their comics and still watch their shows, some of them, and their animated series and everything like that. But as time has gone on, they went from being the movie company, because let's be honest, before X-Men, it was DC. DC was the comic book movie company. I mean, Superman, Batman, Steel. I don't think we should put that one in there, but still. So it's important to note that DC was my company that I loved and watched all their movies. Still watch the movies. I'm not saying they're good, but I still watch them. As time has gone on, though, the pendulum has slowly swung to Marvel. And I feel like eventually it may swing back to DC, with James Gunn becoming the DC guy. But we're talking about the MCU. Let's start talking about it here. Like I said, the MCU is one of my favorite movie series. I mean, it's up there with Rocky, Star Wars, which my dumb mind thinks Star Wars and the MCU are the same universe with Indiana Jones, but we'll come to that another day. And then, honestly, James Bond. James Bond, I watched all the movies. Don't get me wrong, a lot of those are bad, but overall, they've gotten better. So, the MCU is one of my favorite series, like I said. Iron Man 1, well, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was amazing as a kid, but that's because I was a kid. I was 13 when Iron Man 1 came out. Still a kid at that point. You know, I don't know. Technically, I would have been 12. Yeah, I would have been 12. So, I was 12 at the time Iron Man 1 came out. Saw it. Thought it was good. Really saw it just because I think there was a trailer with Transformers, of all things. And I love the Transformers, and I'm like, oh, that looks cool. I didn't know Black Sabbath at the time. Started learning about Black Sabbath, too. So, Iron Man 1 was a great film. Let's just say that right away. Since then, though, the MCU's taken a huge spike. And then I would say they're slowly declining down. And I think there's many reasons for that. I didn't want to rip the MCU apart before saying I'm a huge fan. There's been a shield here for how many, like, I think it's been 2 years at this point? There's been this Captain America shield here every episode. Well, not every episode. There was a couple episodes that I didn't have it, but that's not important. I'm a huge MCU fan. I've got loads of action figures from the MCU. I don't have them here because that'd be a pain in the ass to bring them to the studio. But let's start talking about the problems here, where I think the writing is the biggest thing of note here. The writing, scripts are kind of cookie cutter, and don't get me wrong, they were kind of cookie cutter before, but they were building to something, so there was some kind of, they were building up to the Avengers. Then they were building up to the Infinity Saga ending. So, you know, they were building to something. Though they were cookie cutter, we were all excited because what were they building to? These, it doesn't feel like they're building to anything. I mean, the multiverse saga should be awesome, but instead they're using it as a crutch lately where, hey, how can we get a cameo from somebody that wasn't from this universe in here? I mean, a good example, Patrick Stewart in Doctor Strange didn't need to be there. Didn't need to be there whatsoever. The Inhumans. Well, it's cool because I watched Inhumans and didn't like the show. It's just like, he didn't need to be there. I know Inhumans is technically a part of the MCU, but this was a different dimension, so. John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. Is he going to be coming back as Mr. Fantastic? Probably not. So it's just kind of a throwing a bone to people at this point. And don't get me wrong, I liked Doctor Strange, actually. But some of those were just like, you're throwing him in there just because. I think another thing to note is there's too much comedy. This coming from a comedian, a guy who's training to be a comedian, actor, and singer. I wouldn't say training, but, you know, working towards it. There's too much comedy. These movies have just become comedic, and it's scary. Because, you know, Infinity War and Endgame, they had some comedy, but they didn't detract from the fact that these are serious movies. They went even beyond comic book movies. They were serious movies. Like, look at The Dark Knight. There's comedy in there, but it doesn't change the tone of the movie. That's kind of what Endgame and Infinity War did. So, I think we're in that point where there's too much comedy and they're going too far. And hopefully they'll change it a little bit and not be as comedy focused. Then I got here too many big CGI fights at the end. That has been... A lot of these movies have been big CGI fights at the end. Let's just be honest. And don't get me wrong, I understand that you can't really change that to an extent because a lot of these movies need CGI. That's fine. But there's too many big CGI fights. Everything leads to a big fight at the end. Some movies, honestly, as weird as it sounds, even if it's an action movie, I don't need a big fight at the end. I don't. I want a good story. And a big fight at the end, you know, ends up not really perfecting the story, if that makes sense. So, that's one of the big problems, the writing. Now, this is another one that I think is kind of a problem, but I'm not going to throw everybody under the bus for this. The actors. And I know what you're thinking. The casting for the MCU's been great, Damien. What are you talking about? The casting's been great for almost everybody. But the villains are really hit or miss. And I'll point that out. The biggest two that come to mind as of late, we're not talking old ones because there were bad ones in the past. That's not changed. But the biggest two is Christian Bale. Seemed really out of place in Thor: Love and Thunder. He was a stoic, like Shakespearean kind of guy, you know, I would say. And he's in this comedy film. That's really the best way to describe it. Same with Jonathan Majors. Jonathan Majors' allegations aside, we're not talking about that. In Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Is it Quantumania? Yeah, Quantumania. He just seemed out of place because he was a big villain. But it's a comedy film. So, once again, comes back to the writing. I think these, if they were not in a comedy type film, they could have been huge. They could have been Thanos level situations. Maybe not that big. Killmonger situations. There we go. So, I think it also comes down, the writing is cookie cutter because there's too many projects. So, we're having it where there's 3 films a year. That's okay. I can be fine with 3 films a year. But there's shows. There's so many shows. I mean, there was WandaVision, Loki, What If, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I think Hawkeye. Hawkeye came out that year too. Those were all in the same. That's 5 shows. That's a lot of content. And don't get me wrong. I like the idea of having more content, but after those shows, the Marvel Cinematic Universe show-wise content has been really hit or miss. Don't get me wrong, the Netflix shows were hit or miss. Inhumans was terrible, but I think they even said that the Netflix shows don't even technically tie in anymore. But they're in my headcanon. Same with Indiana Jones and Star Wars all being the same universe. They're my headcanon, and I'll keep them there. I think the biggest thing to note is, you know, the shows were good. Those first couple of shows, like, WandaVision was good, minus episode or 2. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was good. First watch. Second watch and third watch, you know, it's kind of not as good, I'll be honest. It's more of just an action movie with comedy. Loki is still great. Loki's easily the best show. Then we got What If. Cool idea, but missed, I think. Hawkeye, I have a bias there, so let's just move on. I think the shows have taken a dip down because they were planning these shows for years. Now, they're kind of not planning them as much. I mean, we'll get to it in just a second of future projects, but a good point is to point out that Echo is getting a show for a character that, no offense to the actress, she did nothing wrong. I don't care about the character. I don't need a show based off of her. I care about Kate Bishop. Give me a show with Kate Bishop again. Don't give me Echo. But whatever, I'm once again not in the thing here. But I think they should be dropping the 3 films a year, max 3, 2 shows per year, and then 1 special. So when I say the special, I mean like Werewolf by Night, and we're forgetting the holiday special. That's we don't count that. So dropping the 3 films a year, maybe do one in March, July, and September. That'd be my ideal area. 2 shows, have it go from April to May and October to November in theory. And then have that 1 special from September to December in that area. Keep it in those 4 months because the specials make sense because, I mean, the holiday special made sense because December. Werewolf by Night made sense because of, Halloween. I think they should keep them in that range, though. Just to be honest. I don't know why, just something about it. I have a bias towards September, so that's why I kept it in there. And then October to December makes sense, too. So, let's talk about future projects. Where we got Loki Season 2, which is coming out soon, and I'm hoping this can kind of steer the ship in the right direction. Loki Season 2 is going to start October 6th, unless they change that from when I'm filming this. It's going to be 6 episodes. Cool. I'm excited. Then we got The Marvels coming out in November of this year. I don't have the exact date. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if they're going to change it or not, so I'm just putting November. Then we got What If Season 3 supposedly is coming out in December, and it's going to have 9 episodes. What If Season 1 was so I'm not really too excited for What If Season 2. Echo Season 1 coming out January of 2024. Once again, I don't think she needs her own show. I think they should have made a Hawkeye Season 2. Maybe without Jeremy Renner, though. Because Kate Bishop takes over the Hawkeye mantle, I think. Maybe she sees him occasionally for some advice or something. That'd be the only thing that you need. And then maybe she works with the lady from Echo. I forget her name, I'll be honest. I'm terrible at remembering names. Then we got Deadpool 3 coming in May of 2023. And then after that, it's kind of a big break here where we got Captain America Brave New World in July of 2024. Thunderbolts in December of 2024. Agatha Darkhold Diary Season 1. It says Season 1 on the internet, so I don't think Agatha needed a show either, if I'm being honest. But cool. That's going to get 9 episodes in late 2024. Blade is getting the movie in 2024, supposedly. Ironheart, which doesn't have a date yet, but it's supposedly going to be 6 episodes, which I'm kind of excited for that one, actually. I don't think she needed a show, but I'm excited for it. And then Daredevil Born Again is getting 18 episodes, but that's on hold as well because the writer and director, or the writers and actors strike. So really what I'm saying is, I love the MCU, but we're running into problems now that, I don't know, maybe they need to take the DC route and give it a reboot or something. I don't know. I love the series, and I love everything that's going on, but when you compare it, I mean, a good example of why I say that they're not doing the multiverse right is look at their multiverse for the MCU and compare it to, even though biased towards Sony, even though I love the MCU, I love the Sony Spider-Man universe so far. And Spider-Verse, I take it they're in the same universe personally. So the animated movies are mixed with the actual Spider-Verse movies. They're the same universe in my mind. So I just like that, honestly. I'm enjoying it. I enjoy the idea, that they're the same universe. And they don't just do it for jokes. Though there was the one joke in Across the Spider-Verse, but we're not going to spoil it. But they make it make sense. So they're not just cameos to be there, even though there's some cameos that are just there. the cameos are there for a reason. And I like that, for the most part. Except 2. I'll be honest, 2 of them are just there for fan appeal, and that's okay with me. So, what do you think they can do to fix the MCU? I wouldn't really use fix, but steer it in the right direction now, I would say, because once again, it's been kind of in a weird area where it's a bit on a decline. Once again, I don't like saying it, but it's the case. So, what do you think they can do to fix the MCU? Tell me in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and have a far off night.